Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, I remember when I was in high school in Detroit, Michigan, and the news bug bit me, and I knew that I had to go for this with gusto. And I love other people who find their calling early on, and that describes my next guest. Kay Van Way is in the studio. She's one of the top medical malpractice attorneys in the state of Texas, and you got the lawyer bug in high school.
I did, but I wasn't in Detroit. I was in Lawton, Oklahoma. So a little bit of a difference there.
A little different. What was it about law that attracted you?
Well, you know, I think I was thinking back that, you know, when I went to the first day of junior high, I wanted to wear my chaps because I was a horse girl from the time. I was one of those little ponytail girls that just loved horses. And my parents were like, well, you know, this is junior high, probably not. So I hadn't really found myself, and I summoned up the courage to run for student council as a sophomore. And then I ended up being the first female student body president of my high school. And so I got the leadership bug. I was a varsity debater. Wow. You know, I wasn't necessarily getting all the dates. You know, I was kind of a nerd, but I knew I wanted to lead, and primarily I wanted to help people that were marginalized or left out. That's really been my thing.
I love that. Okay, much more from Kay in a minute. We found a great bio video. Let's go ahead and roll that.
My name is Kay Van Way. I'm a native Okie. I was born in Oklahoma City and raised in southwestern Oklahoma in Lawton, Oklahoma. My father was a small-town businessman, and my mother was a ballet teacher. So I spent much of my youth in the ballet studio and also in the horse pasture. Being in the horse pasture was really much more authentic to me than being a ballet dancer. I was that kind of tomboy, pigtailed girl who loved horses. I think that one of the reasons that I'm such a fighter, and some people might say so feisty, is, you know, my dad might say that I have had a little chip on my shoulder because I've been a victim of a tragic loss. I had to be involved in the legal system as a result of that. I didn't want to be, but I was thrust into that situation. And in certain respects, the legal system treated me well as a victim. And in other cases, the opposition didn't care a bit about my personal feelings or destroying me personally because all they cared about was winning. So I take extreme offense when anyone tries to walk on my clients because it's as if they're walking on me, and I won't have it. I was driving down the road the other day, and there was a sign. It's probably outside of a church, and it said, "You were put here for a reason." And I was like, oh yeah, you know, because I have been at it a minute. And sometimes I do look around at my friends who are retired and I'm like, maybe I should pick up golf or, you know, just travel or something like that. I think it's important that I stay in there and keep fighting to the best of my ability because there aren't enough of us who are doing so. And I care because I'm a patient and everybody I love is a patient. So I have a vested interest in trying to make the healthcare system safer.
All right, the word that stuck out was feisty. And I like that. I mean, you want a lawyer who's feisty, don't you?
Yes, I think I have to be extra feisty because I'm short. I always joke with people, I just say, I'm just a little old lady. I wouldn't hurt a fly. Just try me and find out.
That's right. And you also teach at SMU, which is amazing. Tell us about that.
Well, that's been a tremendous honor, first of all. But it's also made me a better lawyer. I've had to learn to explain the law to people that don't know anything about this area of the law. And it forces me to challenge myself and some of my own assumptions. Plus, I've never represented a hospital or a corporation. I've always represented the little guy, the patient, the powerless against the powerful. But I'm supposed to be fair and balanced. So it makes me have to think about the other side of things a little bit more.
And tell us about the next generation of lawyers. Are you encouraged by the young people that you're meeting?
I'm very encouraged by the next generation of lawyers, but I'll tell you what continues to concern me is when I go to medical malpractice conferences, I look around and everybody's my age, and we don't have young people entering the profession. And the reason that is that we have severe tort reform, not only in Texas, but nationwide. And it is very, very hard to sue doctors, hospitals, whatnot. As well, there are severe caps on damages. So in Texas, for example, in 2003, when we got the harshest reforms, there were a lot of lawyers that hung up their cleats and said, you know, to heck with this, I'm going to go become a business litigator or whatnot. So the small gang of us that have just stuck it out decade after decade, no matter what they throw at us, there's a perception among the younger lawyers that this is a dead specialization. And so I tell my students at SMU Law School on day one of class, I say, I'm going to tell you right now, I have an ulterior motive. My motive is that I hope I light a fire in at least one of you, and that you will want to become a medical malpractice lawyer for a patient. And why do I care about that? Well, one of the primary reasons I care about that is I'm a patient myself, and everybody I love and care about is also a patient. And we need medical malpractice lawyers, the great levelers of the, like I say, the powerless against the powerful.
Yes. Okay, I want you to set up a video. We're going to play this in a minute, but you actually helped get a law passed. Tell us about this video we're about to see.
Well, you know, to the point about being a professor making me a better lawyer, I was preparing for class, and that week's class was about informed consent. And so I started digging a little bit deeper into informed consent. And what that is, you know, when everybody goes in for surgery, they know no matter if you're getting a bunionectomy or open heart surgery, you have to sign here, initial here, here, here. You know, you could die, you could get an infection, you could have a heart attack, a stroke, you know, all of these things. And the original concept was to provide valuable information to patients so that they could make informed decisions about the planned procedure before giving their consent. But what has actually happened is that these have become like legal disclaimer documents, and everybody knows it. And it's a formality. Sign it, or else you're not going to get your surgery or your procedure.
Right.
So I really started looking into, well, like, who gets to write these things? And in Texas, we have something called the Texas Medical Disclosure Panel. And I was like, well, let me keep peeling this onion. Are these political appointees? I would say yes. And it's doctors, comprised of doctors who are appointed, and 3 lawyers. And I'm like, well, who are these lawyers? And I start looking at the lawyers. And I'm like, well, every one of these lawyers work for hospitals. They're all healthcare lawyers. And there's not a single public member on there, such as a patient safety advocate. There's no lawyer on there that represents patients to advocate for patients. So I contacted my former law partner originally at the time and said, hey, you know, we need to do something about this. And so she was the one that initially proposed the legislation. And all we were asking for is to say, look, fair is fair. Of the 3 lawyers, one of them needs to be someone who represents patients, and you need to have at least one public member on there. And you wouldn't have thought that would be extremely controversial, but, you know, that effort, it got through committee, passed the House, went to the Senate, but then it never got to the governor's. I'm sorry, that's not right. It passed the House, it never got to a Senate vote. Something happened, the session ended, and then so my current rep, Representative Cass Hernandez, re-proposed the bill this last legislative session, and it got all the way to the governor's desk and it's signed. So hopefully that will change things, yes. But it's a small step.
All right, let's go ahead and roll that video.
My name is Kay Van Way, and for more than 40 years, although I hate to admit it, it's been that long, I've represented patients whose lives have been destroyed by preventable medical errors. I also serve as adjunct professor of law at SMU Dedman School of Law, where I teach the course on law and medicine, which is medical malpractice. Alongside other attorneys, I played a pivotal role in the infamous Dr. Death cases, represented over a dozen of his victims, and assisted the prosecution with landing him life in prison. In addition to representing patients, I spend an inordinate amount of my time advocating for patient safety. Why? Because I'm a patient, and everyone that I love is a patient. One thing everyone in this room has in common, regardless of which side of the aisle we sit on, regardless of whether we are Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal, is that every one of us is a patient, and everyone we love is a patient. So we probably have all ourselves been in the situation where we've had to undergo a medical procedure. And all of you will recall having that situation where, you know, you're naked and afraid, so to speak. You're stripped of all of your worldly belongings, you're in a paper gown, and the only thing that separates you from your fellow human is a little plastic wristband. And then the last thing that happens, you may or may not have been sedated. A nurse comes in with a clipboard and says, sign here, here, initial here, 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 here. This has become a perversion of what the long-standing law on informed consent was intended to be. For decades and centuries, the law has recognized that physicians have an obligation to explain the risks of the procedure so that when patients consent to procedures, they can do so in a truly informed manner. But what these documents have become are legal disclaimer documents. When you list death, for example, as a known risk and complication of every procedure, regardless of whether it's a bunionectomy or a brain surgery, the forms have become so cluttered with all of this information that it has become meaningless to the patient. It's meaningful for the healthcare providers because once they comply with the forms that are prescribed, then they get a legal presumption that they were not negligent in the delivery of informed consent. So patients need a voice. The members of the Texas Medical Disclosure Panel have a conflict of interest in the sense that they benefit, the more disclosures they put in there, the more they're protected. So thank you for your time. Let's do something to give patients.
Wow, I'm very impressed. You're so poised. That had to be, a time of anxiety. You're testifying.
Well, it's a foreign experience, that's for sure. But you just feel like you really want to be at your best. It's inspiring to go down to the legislature and you go to the state capitol and you just, it's a big deal. It's an honor.
Anything you want to add to that narrative?
Well, the only thing I would say is that there was a member of the committee, and I won't name names, but he said, well, I've got a question. And he went on this long narrative about how Governor Perry had appointed him to clean up the big mess in Texas that trial lawyers like me had created with frivolous lawsuits and these runaway juries, which of course was the great lie back then.
Yes.
And, you know, you were kidding me about being spicy and spunky. I was like, oh, no, I'm not going to let that stand. And I very calmly said, well, you know, Senator, whoever you were, Representative so-and-so, I said, you know, everyone loves to hate on a trial lawyer until they need a trial lawyer. And no one ever thinks they're going to need a medical malpractice lawyer until they do.
Wow.
And then when they do, they realize that we're not all these, you know, horned, forked, you know, tongued monsters. You know, for the most part, we're really hardworking people who are trying to get justice for people who were going along minding their own business, and they, you know, some tragedy befell them.
Well, you've had so many successful outcomes over the years, but I know one of the cases that you worked on was the Dr. Death case. Will you remind us about that?
Yes. So Christopher Dunch was a young neurosurgeon that graduated from a prestigious neurosurgery residency program in Tennessee. Then he was recruited to Dallas. And on paper, he looked great. But beginning with literally like the first surgery he did here, questions began to arise about him, like something is off with this guy. One of the very first surgeries he did the surgery, patient goes to the recovery room, goes to the floor, he goes to Las Vegas, and never rounded on the patient or made any arrangements for anybody else to round on the patient. There was a witness later on who said he was laid out on the luggage carousel at the airport. So, you know, that's concerning.
Yes.
But he went on to maim and kill at least 15 people that we know of.
Wow.
And it's been a well-documented story, but the reason that he was able to keep going was because our hospitals in the Dallas-Fort Worth area didn't stop him, even though they had an obligation to. So he would leave one hospital, get to go to another hospital, then he'd go to another hospital, and ultimately we coordinated with the Dallas County District Attorney's Office, and Michelle Shugart, a young prosecutor whom I admire so much, she ended up prosecuting him, and the jury gave him a life sentence.
Wow.
And that's where he is today.
And you represented something like a dozen of the
Yes.
victims?
Yes, yeah. I represented, I think, 12 victims, and starting at the second hospital. And then he went on to 2 other places after that.
Have things changed so there can never be another Dr. Death?
So Dr. Death wasn't the first cocaine-addicted spine surgeon that I ever prosecuted or sued. About a decade before Dunch, there was a Dallas orthopedic spine surgeon who had a major cocaine problem. And I represented about 10 patients whose lives he destroyed then. Then we have Dunch. Since that time, which has been about 10 years ago, I and others who were involved in those cases, including physicians, have advocated for reforms. Because the Dunch case got so much publicity, we thought, well, finally, we have a platform to get people to do something about the problem. And I would say there have been absolutely 0 reforms. The reforms aren't hard, they're not onerous, but we have found that no one really cares because no one really thinks that's going to happen to them. And when I say no one, I mean politicians.
Yes.
And they're focused on other issues.
Okay, we've got about a minute left, and we pray that people don't need your help, but unfortunately, too often, there is a situation where they might need to contact you. What does that look like? They contact your office? Do they have a visit with you? How do you, what's the process?
Well, we're happy for people to contact us if they, if their spidey senses, so to speak, are like, something wasn't right here in terms of medical care that they received. To be honest, we sometimes make people mad because they contact us and they want to sue a doctor or a hospital, and we have to say no. And then they get mad at us. I say, well, don't be mad at me.
Right.
Don't kill the messenger here.
Right.
But particularly for permanent, disabling, life-altering injuries or a wrongful death, we talk to a lot of people. We have a good team, which includes a registered nurse on our staff. So they can reach out, they can go onto the website, they can do a live chat, they can fill out a form, they can call us. All roads lead to us.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your heart and your wisdom with us. We're going to end with her website, which is vanwaylaw.com, the great Kay Van Way. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
That's it for now. We'll see you next time.